Is Bryce Young a top 15 quarterback in the NFL? We are here to discuss and debate. Let's go.
Brace yourself for the ultimate Carolina Panthers experience. Welcome to Two Growls, One Roar, the podcast that hits harder than a Luke Kuechly tackle. We're diving deep into the heart of Panther Nation, bringing you unrivaled passion, insider takes, and pure gridiron fire. From Wilmington to the cosmos, this is your home for the fiercest football talk east or west of Charlotte.
Welcome in, folks, to another edition of the Two Growls, One Roar podcast. Let's make it short and sweet. Hit the subscribe button and let's keep the content rolling. Now, let's talk about the main subject, which is, of course, our quarterback in the Carolinas, none other than Bryce Young. And it's funny to sit here 2 years after he's drafted, going into his third season, and really almost 2 years from the collapse of the early part of the season last year, coming up on a few months, sitting here thinking about him being top 15, because through the first season and the first two games, really his first 20 games in the NFL, we all know the story, whether you pin that on Frank Reich, Thomas Brown, the personnel, the lack of protection on the offensive line, the number of sacks, or him just not getting it, his size maybe, not just not having a feel for the game in the NFL. He finally figured it out. And so it's funny that we are now in a position to potentially talk about him being top 15. Now, we talk about Bryce Young here in the Carolinas, and I think some people kind of hold things to take it a little bit personally when they see a ranking and they have Bryce Young listed as maybe 20 or 21 or 22. And I think we have to be realistic, because when you go down the list, and I do think as we sit here that there's a strong chance that we can make a case that he could land as a top 15 quarterback. I think he has to earn it. Like what he did the second half of last season when he came back and started, it actually was a little bit slow to get there, but he got it. He figured it out, and then he closed it out strong. We want to see that for a full year. Once you see that for a full year, then I think we're in a position. But part of this stemmed from we're seeing the rankings. There's various ones. You can go out, you can Google, you can find whatever ranking and search that you want to pull up with Bryce Young listed as 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. I think Mina Kimes had him in at 21 or 22. I reposted it. I said that's fair, because Bryce Young has to earn it. And I think if he continues to play the way that he did to close out the season, there's no doubt, even for the folks that hate him that are here in Carolina or across the league, there's no doubt that they're going to have to sit back and say, you know what, this guy is one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. There's a big list that we'll go through of guys, and we're going to say, do we think he's better or could be better? And I think, at least right now, we're sitting in that 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 range. But Mina Kimes liked the tweet. You guys can't see it when people like and retweet, but it's cool to see some of that happened. All right, so it was a tale of two halves last season during the 2024 campaign for Bryce Young. We know, we don't have to rehash this. I don't do a ton of Bryce Young content, primarily because it's over talked about, in my opinion. I talk about him enough during the season. I talked about him way too much last year when things were not going well. And then, of course, when he rebounded, I know there's a lot of time you could spend spinning your wheels over here trying to make a case for him or talk about this and that, but I just don't. Anyways, we're going to do it today, though. He's got his whole episode just for Bryce Young and the supporters. We go back thinking about 23, which we already framed the 2023 season with everything that happened. You have your head coach that's fired. You don't know what your offense is running. You're making changes between Thomas Brown and Frank Reich calling the plays. It was a complete dumpster fire. Then you're trying to just stay in the pocket, stand up. You don't have a good group of receivers. You have DJ Chark, Laviska Shenault, guys coming off the practice squad trying to, feed them the football. It wasn't great. It was not great at all. And so we come into this second year with Dave Canales, and everybody says he's the quarterback whisperer. He's going to get it right. And I think we thought initially he would get it right much earlier, but it did take some time. And it took a benching, and it took circumstances out of his control to get back into the lineup with Andy Dalton getting in a car wreck. We continue to say what could have or what would have happened if that never occurred. Never want to see someone injured. But when it's your chance and you get an opportunity, or there's a pathway for the Carolina Panthers who weren't trending in the right direction at that point, it made sense. Like, okay, maybe the injury was minor, even though it was Dalton's throwing hand from what we were told. But maybe, it was just like, you know what, let's go ahead. Let's go back. Let's have one last audition, whether it's for us or someone else. And sure enough, post benching, we got to see a fantastic performance from Bryce Young. We did not see a fantastic performance the first two games. No touchdowns, lots of interceptions. But over the course of really when he closed this out, ended up with 15 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 0 interceptions in the final 3 games. Like, he was performing well, managing the football game, making clutch throws. I mean, it was by far one of his like, he was figuring it out. And I got to say, for the early part of his career, even though it's only 20 games, you'd say the first half of his early career here, over more than that, really. Every Sunday, when we originally saw him outside of the Houston Texans game, the Atlanta Falcons that they squeaked out in his rookie season, and the Green Bay game, out of those 3, there was never a moment where you sat back in that an early phase of his career where you as a fan felt like, oh yeah, we've got Bryce Young, we've got a weapon. It's not the same thing as the feeling you had when it was a Cam Newton here or a Jake Delhomme, using references here in Carolina, or whatever your quarterback is for whatever team you follow. If you don't follow the Carolina Panthers, it was different. You felt like, oh my gosh, is this team going to be able to put points on the board this week? That's exactly what it felt like. It's like, oh my gosh, this thing is dragging along. But we saw the progression, and one of the bright spots for me as we talk about Bryce Young going into this year, as you think about his weapons from the first 2 seasons, and it's no knock on the crew that we had here last year, but you think about Xavier Liggett not performing as well as we had hoped. You think about having to rely on Jalen Coker that came on a little bit longer, Adam Thielen getting hurt. You think about trading away Deontay Johnson, your primary target, the guy you brought in to help Bryce Young, who saw some success, Jonathan Mingo, who was drafted here in Bryce Young's class to help develop alongside of him. So you have all these pieces that are supposed to help you flourish as a quarterback, and they don't pan out. Tommy Tremble, you're figuring out Jatavian Sanders, who was bright side. But you think about all those things happening, and really towards the end of the season where you have a David Moore in the lineup, you lost Deontay Johnson, you don't have Jonathan Mingo, you're running Dan Chisena out there. It's honestly impressive to think about the performances that we saw from Bryce Young down the stretch. And it's a reason why I am personally higher on my perspective of where I think he's going to pan out. I'm not one of those that's here to tell you I think for sure he's going to be top 15, but I think trending the way that it looks, that yes, I do think we should see it. And I'm not the only one. There's a few folks. NFL insider Nick Shook has him as the number 14 overall quarterback in this year. He had him over, which is kind of a little surprising on some of this, Kyler Murray, Bo Nix, Tua, CJ Stroud, Rodgers, Caleb Williams, and Jalen Hurts. I don't know if this is pure passing, and maybe that's why, but at least there's some folks out there that are teetering in that direction. But Carolina Panthers did a lot of things this offseason to help Bryce Young. Free agency wasn't the big splash that we thought it would be, but you do end up getting, after the draft, you bring in Hunter Renfrow, you draft Tedero McMillan, you draft Jimmy Horn, You still have Adam Thielen. You still have Xavier Legette. You still have Jalen Coker and David Moore and Jacoby George. Like, it is a cluster of prospects and talents. You draft a tight end to help. You bring back Tommy Tremble. You have Jatavian Sanders, who we think is going to be healthy and is going to, find it and click. And I think he's going to have a 500-yard season. You have Chuba Hubbard. Like we said, the offensive line is stable. You bring in Rico Dowdle. You also draft ETN. So in like the perspective of the lineup that we saw for Bryce Young in his rookie season and even into last year, and now vastly different, especially if Tedero McMillan can hit, especially if Xavier Legette, that's the way he pronounces his last name, although we love to say Legette, if he hits and he finds his stride, even Hunter Renfrow, so many names, the speedster Jimmy Horn Jr., there is an opportunity for this offense to take the next step forward. And if you do see this offense taking the next step forward and the defense itself, and I know this is more of a Bryce Young top 15 quarterback conversation, but getting the defense up to speed, par, bogey level, if we're going to do golf references, should be a decently good football team here in Carolina, which should excite fans. Now, the conversation for today, though, is top 15 quarterback. We can look out across the league, name some of the bigger names, and we may miss some in here, but I'll go through the list, at least the highly notable names of the top quarterback. So Lamar Jackson, I would say yes. He's like Lamar Jackson is better than Bryce Young overall. Doesn't mean that Bryce Young can't outdo him, but I think Lamar Jackson just brings so much. MVP quarterback. Joe Burrow, yes, better than Bryce. Josh Allen. Here's a fun one. Justin Herbert. So a year ago, 2 years ago, I would have said Justin Herbert, hands down, better quarterback than Bryce Young. But now, given what we have seen, I think statistically you may say he is, but I think there's a chance for Bryce Young to overtake him. So now we kind of put him into that maybe category. Jaden Daniels right now, yes, but you want to see it year number 2, make the step. Technically speaking, I mean, Baker Mayfield had his best season last year. He will not have his offensive coordinator there. He was off the charts, but, I think we'd have to give Baker Mayfield the upper hand right now. That would give you 5 quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes, yes. Jared Goff, at least for the time being, I would say yes. Again, it's really stat line that I look at with 400 or 4,600 passing yards, high completion percentage. I think that's really one of the bigger things that's going to help Bryce Young this year. Yak, some receivers that can get yak for him, receivers that can make contested catches, and guys just helping increase his completion percentage. Tua Tagovailoa, when he was healthy, yes, I'd probably put him above Bryce Young, but I don't know that I would now. It depends. So he's another one in the bucket that as you're trying to get your top 15, that maybe he is below Bryce Young. Jordan Love, for now, yes, I would say he's better. Brock Purdy, he's another one in that bucket of, well, I could make a case for Bryce Young. Not yet, but I'm saying it's a possibility. Kyler Murray, I do think Bryce Young is better than him, although kind of similar, but Kyler Murray moves around. I don't know why Kyler Murray looks smaller, even though they're basically the same size. He just looks smaller when I see him on the field. CJ Stroud, I would probably say yes. The fun one in this, Aaron Rodgers, who I don't know if he's in the NFL, but I would say Bryce Young absolutely making a case to be better than him. Caleb Williams, Bo Nix. I do think Bo Nix performed really well last year as a rookie. And then you throw in Bryce Young. So for me, and I know I probably missed a quarterback or two along the way, like we didn't put Matthew Stafford on here. Didn't put Michael Penix on here. Who knows what's going to happen in New Orleans in their quarterback situation. Drake May missed out on him. Whatever the heck's going to happen in Cleveland. But I do think there is a strong case that can be made that Bryce Young is positioned to be a top 15 quarterback for this season. And that's all you can ask for. So top 15 quarterback here in Carolina. Why not? Well, folks, that's going to do it for today's episode. This is Carolina Dad. Y'all have a good one.